Hello, Judy Latavo from the Quilting Bee in Massillon, Ohio. And today we are going to take one of these little composition books that you can find at most dollar stores, and we're going to transition it to one of these by making a nice little cover so it is attractive as we take it out of our purse. But more importantly, we're going to accomplish this by using cereal boxes or any other cracker boxes, any other empty box that we have on hand. So let's see how we do that. From our empty cereal boxes or cracker boxes, we have cut 4 pieces that measure 12.5 centimeters by 8.5 centimeters, and we have labeled those 0-1. These 4 pieces will make up the outside portion of our journal cover, and we are doubling them up because we want a little structural stability to our cover. So it's going to take 4. We have also cut from our cereal box the inside portion of our cover, and those 2 pieces measure 12 centimeters by 8 centimeters. The little flaps that our composition book cover will fit into are 0-4s, and they measure 12 by 4.5 centimeters. We also have the 2 pieces that we're going to use for the binding of our cover, and this can be a lightweight craft paper or construction paper. Mine happen to be a dark gray. Color does not matter. These are cut to 5 centimeters by 15 centimeters. So let's begin. Okay, we are going to start by taking our 4 0-1s, and I'm looking at the painted or printed side of all 4 of them, and they are ready to become 2 units. We're using 4 to make 2 just to give us a little more structural stability. So to begin the process, let's first put a little glue in the tray, in the bowl of our tray, and prime our roller a bit, and then take one of our 0-1s, put it on our scrap paper, spread some glue. Doesn't take a lot of glue because we want a very thin layer. And with our roller, spread that well over that 0-1, making certain we have our corners and our edges good. And take another 0-1, place it on top, and make certain they're square on each other, and press them together and move them over under a very heavy book, the heaviest book you can find. And do the same thing with our other pair, putting it on our scrap paper, spreading some glue, rolling that out. And we're using a roller instead of a brush because a roller gives us a thinner, more consistent layer of glue, which is what we're after. We don't want clumps of glue. We want just a nice thin layer. And then taking my 4th 0-1, printed side down, putting it on top, and squaring those up together, pressing and putting it under a heavy book. We're going to leave that for about 15 minutes to really get well glued together. While we are waiting for our outside cover, the outside of our cover to dry together, we're going to go ahead and start working on the interior portion of our cover. And for that, we need our 2 0.3s and one of our pieces of construction paper. First, make 1 unit out of our 2 0.3s. And we're going to do that by taking one of our 0.3s on the printed side, putting it over here, and putting a bead of glue just down one long side. Doesn't matter which long side, just one long side. And spreading that, about an inch wide. And bringing it back over to my work surface, taking my piece of construction paper, I'm going to lay it over that glue, and you can see that it's extending beyond the top and the bottom. That's okay. Make certain it's glued down well. Then we are going to put a 15 millimeter spacer, and you can either measure approximately ½ inch and draw a line, or from your cereal box cover, measure 15 millimeters and cut a strip of cereal box to use as a spacer. So I have pressed it against my 0.3, and I'm going to form a T-square by having that against my 0.3 that is glued, and putting a ruler or some other straight surface, straight item along the top, so that now I can get that ready, put a bead of glue along one long side of our other 0.3, and with our brush spread it about an inch, and we are going to butt this up against our T-square we have made, pressing it down, removing our spacer, and I got some glue on it, turning it over and pressing well. And once I'm satisfied with the securement that I've created, I need to trim this, and I'm going to trim it by putting my ruler along that edge, and with my rotary cutter trimming my construction paper away. So that I have 1 unit, and that is my inside cover. Oops. Being careful that you don't cut into your cardstock. Now what I'm going to need for this is some fabric, and I want my fabric to be about half an inch to 3/4 of an inch larger. So whatever fabric you're using for the inside of your cover. So I have mine already cut out, and I am ready to go. I have cut out my interior, the fabric for the inside, and it is about ½ an inch all the way around. A little skimpy, but I will be okay. So with our fabric wrong side up, we're going to start adhering our inside cover to our fabric. So I'm going to apply glue to either, it doesn't matter which half I start with, but I'm going to start right here with some glue, spread it with my roller, and I really want to make certain that I am spreading it all the way to the edges, and my corners have a coating of glue. And I will then pick it up and glue side down, I'm going to place it on my fabric, leaving about 1/2 inch all the way around, and press it down. Spreading it well. And I like to hold it up and look at my corners to make certain the fabric is not falling away from my cardstock, and it is not. So once I'm comfortable that it is well glued, I'm going to gently bring my fabric back to where I'm exposing the construction paper or the craft paper. And again, with just a little glue down the center of that space, because first of all, this is very thin and fairly small. Just applying glue there in that area where our spacer was. And I'm going to lay it over, not pulling, just lay it over, and with my finger, press in that joint, making certain that I have a crease along both sides. We could be using our spatula for this, but this is also very thin. I find my fingernail really works adequately. And once maybe you can see that I have creases there. I'm now going to lay back the unglued fabric gently, and again apply glue to the other 03, getting ready to adhere the fabric. Spreading with my roller and all the way to the edges and the corners. Bringing it back to my work surface without pulling. I'm just gently pressing because I don't want to pull it out of my spine area, out of our joint. And once it's there, now I can really press down harder, not pulling away from, just pressing down. And again, I will look at my corners to make certain nothing is falling away from it. And I'm going to place this under my mat because, as you can see, since it's paper, cardstock is nothing but several layers of paper, it's trying to curl on me. So I want it to be flat. So I'm going to put it under my mat, and that will start to flatten it out. Our outside portion for our cover should be dry or secured. Our 401s that have become 201s. So we will work on those next. So for that, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the inside of our cover, which is begin to make one unit. So if you recall, what we did to do that was a bead of glue down one long edge, either long edge, it doesn't matter which one. Spread some glue about 1 inch in width, and lay our other piece of construction paper or craft paper on top, press down, and there we are. We are going to again need our spacer and our ruler to make our T-square, and that's all in place. So I can put a bead of glue down a long side of our remaining 01. And spread it out. And again, take it up against a butt that T-square, both the top and the side, along our 15 millimeter spacer, or our 1/2 inch line that we've drawn, whichever technique you're using. And press it well. And with our ruler in place along that edge, we can trim away our excess construction paper in my case. And get all set to go. All right. So again, we are going to need a piece of fabric that's approximately 1/2 inch larger all the way around. And I have mine cut out. It's a companion to the interior, or to the inside, and that's what I have. So in preparation for that, we will start with one or the other companion to the interior or to the inside, and that's what I have. So in preparation for that, we will start with one or the other, doesn't matter which one, and spread some glue only on the 01, not going over into our spine area or our joint. So I'm going to, again, place this, center it on my fabric, and press down. I'm especially pressing the edges and the corners. And I'm going to see if anything falls away, and it doesn't. Okay. Lay my fabric gently back on itself. I will apply glue down that spine area. This is the spine of our cover. Okay. May have gotten a little too much glue, but we'll be okay. The more glue you use, the longer it takes to dry. I'm gently, just very gently putting it in place. But since this is a little thicker, I am going to use my spatula, and I am going to bring it into that crease and then rock it back, and go along the other crease line. With this being thicker, there's more of an indentation, and so our spatula will get a better securement for us. Okay. Making certain I have no wrinkles. I will lay my fabric back, exposing the other 01, the remaining 01 in this case. Some glue that we will spread. I'm laying it over just gently. And I like to start in the center and smooth out, not pulling, smooth out. And once it's in place, then I can press. But you notice I'm pressing up and down. I'm not pulling out. It's up and down. And let's look at our corners. Corners look good. So now we are ready to bring all of our fabric up and finish our outside cover. To finish our cover, or I think of it as hemming it, but it's folding all of our fabric over onto itself, we're going to need our corner miter tool, and we are going to miter all 4 corners at a 45-degree angle. And if you don't have the corner miter tool, you can do it with scissors, being certain that you'll leave enough space. Thickness of our corner miter tool is more than adequate to bring up over the corner of our cover. So that's what we are doing. We're trimming away the excess fabric on all 4 corners. So we are ready to bring all of that excess fabric up and over. All right, now that we have our corners all mitered, we are going to start folding our fabric over. And we're going to do that by putting a bead of glue along a long side, just a bead, and with our brush, spreading that a good 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, whatever we need for the fabric that we have exposed, and coming over into each corner. I'm spreading onto the fabric in each corner, just like so. Spreading it out as thinly as I can. And I'm going to take my spatula, bring it under and up and over. Notice I'm in the center. I always start in the center and then work to the edges. And if I get some glue on my spatula, I clean it off. And then I want to crease right at that corner, just as you would a package if you were wrapping it, up and flat. So we have a nice crease in that corner with the little bit of excess fabric we have. So again, down and out. And we will do the other long side, same way. A bead of glue down the edge, spreading it with our brush, into our corners, evening it out, and then with our spatula, we're going under, up, and over. And that's why we want our spatula to be nice and clean, because we're going under our combination of 0 1s. And if we had glue here, that would mark the front of our fabric. So we want a clean spatula. Then we're going to do the sides, or the edges, the corners, and come along and press like we did before. Press down and up against our cardstock and clean it if necessary. So now we're left with just our 2 short ends. So starting with the short end right here. Again, we are spreading just on the cardstock and onto the corner. Cardstock and onto the corner. so that when we go under, up, and over, we are getting that little bit of our corner covered. But you notice I have a couple of dog ears, so let's see if I can work those in with my finger. And if I can, I will be fine. The reason we may have some dog ears is because our corner miter tool is the thickness of 0.1 chipboard, which is what we would normally use. So the fabric we have left with our 45-degree cut is a little more than we really need. So what we are doing is pressing it in. If we can't get it to stay, we will snip it very gently with scissors, no problem. So now we're going to do our other short end. A bead of glue on our cover stock and into that corner, into this corner. Not quite as conscientious about our layer of glue as we have been in the past. And under, up, and over. And again, looking at my corners, and they need a little encouragement as to exactly where I want them to be. But that's looking pretty good. Look at it from the front side. It looks good. So it is ready to go under my mat. We're putting things under the mat because this is very little cardstock that we have, very thin, and it will have a greater tendency to warp on us than our heavier might. Oh, I see this one is not cooperating. So when we take it out later, I may have to trim that. We'll see. So again, putting it under my cutting mat. All right, we still have two pieces that we haven't handled. Boy, they've been left out. And these are the pockets for our cover. And the reason we're sort of doing things out of sequence is because we are using such thin material. We want to be able to place it under our mat or under a heavy book for as much of its drying time as we can. So we're sort of hopping from section to section. But now it's time to address our pockets. And those are 04. And what we need for our 04s is 2 pieces of fabric. Again, about 1/2 inch larger all the way around. So once we have that, we're ready to begin. So I'm going to get my fabric out of the way, take one of my 04s, and again, always putting glue on the unstamped side. I'm going to spread some glue all along the 04 and using my ruler get a nice thin layer. And what I'm after is making certain that my edges and my corners are well covered with glue so that when I place it on the wrong side of my fabric, I can feel certain that my corners and edges are going to be well glued. So I pressed on the back side, now I'm pressing on the front, and I'm going to hold it up and make certain that no corner or edge is falling away, which it isn't. And of course, it's going to go back under the mat because we're already getting our little warp. Paper does not like moisture. And I'm running out of room under my mat. So let's do the other one. Again, it's 04 that we are going to, on the unstamped side, on the plain side that doesn't have any printing, because we don't want printing to show through our fabric. So I'm going to apply glue, spread it, and it's easier to spread because there's more glue in my roller. Just like painting a wall, the more you use that roller, the more paint that is absorbed into the roller, and it takes less and less to get the desired end result. Wrong side of my fabric facing up, taking my 04, putting it in the center, tapping it down, turning it over, and smoothing it out. Oops. Making certain I press my edges and corners well, and then looking at it to make certain nothing is falling away, and I'm okay. So again, finding it a spot and putting it under there. So I'm going to take out my 03, my inside of my cover. It's been under my mat all this time. So I'm taking it out, and I'm going to work with it for a while. And what I'm going to do with it, first off, is trim the short ends even with my cardstock. So I will need my ruler for that. And I will line up my ruler very carefully. And with my rotary cutter, cut that off straight across, even with my cardstock. Both ends, both short ends. Not the long ends, the short ends. So I'm left with excess fabric only on the long ends. And consequently, I'm going to apply a bead of glue along one of those long ends. Spread it. And since I cut my fabric a little skimpy, I don't have to spread it very wide. I don't know why I did that. I had plenty of fabric. Must have looked at it wrong. And again, as before, we go under and up and over. And of course, I have glue because I have a little fabric coming over. Bring it up and over so that it is well covered. Better to wipe and not knead it than to knead it and not wipe. Because any marking, especially on my darker fabric here, any glue, although it will dry clear, I might still see the residue on the front. So I'm trying to be careful. Again, a bead of glue, spreading it. Okay, that's pretty good. And up and over. Notice I only glue on my scrap paper. I try never to glue on my mat because that's where my fabric oftentimes is laying, and I don't want glue on the mat that's going to get on the fabric. Okay. So that looks good. Back under the mat. And I am going to take out my pockets, one of the pockets, and it's straightened out pretty well, so I feel good about that. If you have too much fabric, this is a good time to trim it, but I think I'm okay, so I'm not going to worry about it. Along one of my long edges, I haven't trimmed any corners. Before I trim anything, along one of my long edges, a bead of glue. And I will spread that, going over onto the fabric. And bring that up and over, even on the fabric. And it's easier, I think, if I use my fingers. So I will do that with each 04, putting it back under, taking the other one out, and doing the same exact thing. A bead of glue, long edge, spreading it, coming onto the fabric on both sides, and bringing it up and over. Okay, and looking at it, good. And under my mat. Okay, so back to our 203s that are now together. We are going to take them out, take it out, as well as our 2 pockets. They've had as much rest as they're going to get. And what we have to make certain of now with our pockets, remember, they're going to go like this. That's the pocket that the outside of the composition book will fit into the cover of the existing cover. So what we are going to do now is line up our pockets to our inside of our cover. But before we do that, we have to miter our corners. So let's go ahead and get that job done with our corner miter tool, or just going at a 45-degree angle with your scissors, and get all 4 corners nice and trimmed. And we'll do both of them and get that out of the way. Now we're not doing we aren't doing the top where we have folded over our fabric. We're doing the bottom side, which is still loose. So here I go, trimming away at my lower corners. And I am ready to lay my 03s that are now a unit, lay them up to where they are flush with the cardstock of our pocket. So they are absolutely flush with that cardstock. And holding them secure, I will move it over to my scrap paper and apply glue to my 2 short ends. Just like so, just where the pocket will be. And I'm going onto the fabric that's already covered. The fabric of the 03s. And just as we do all of our sides, I'm going to under, up, and over. Under, up, and over. And then at my corners, pressing down and up at both corners, both corners. Plural, there's 2 of them. So I end up with my pocket. Now what I'm going to do is do the short end, spread it into that corner along the chipboard, or I'm sorry, this isn't chipboard, the cardstock, smoothing it out, getting my corners well, and bringing it up and over. And again, as before, we need to look at our dog ears that we probably will have, work them in. I'm looking at the right side, the finished side, and making certain that they are nice and trim in there. And I'm going to do the same thing now with my other end, lining it up so it's square with my pocket, bringing that unit over, but mine moved, of course, realigning along each edge, each short end, spreading my glue, going into the corner, with my spatula, bringing that side up and over, and pressing down and up at my corners. So I am ready to go along that short end, along my chipboard, spread at the corner, spread and at the corner, bring it up and over, looking at the right side, check my dog ears, working them in. This is what I have now, and I'm going to put it under my mat. All right, we are closing in on the finish line, and I am now taking out from under my mat the outside portion of our cover. And what I need to do is very, either precisely or just by judgment, mark what I think is the center. And if I had a pencil, I would put a pencil mark right here. I don't happen to have one with me. So, and I don't see one around here. So I'm just making an indentation so I can see what I think is the center. This is not critical. What this is where I'm going to place my hole for my elastic that I can enclose it with, keep it closed. So I have my mark. Actually, I am going to mark that a little more plainly. See if this will do it. You can measure this if you want, but eyeballing it is just fine. So that's where I think I want my hole. I happen to have a handy little critter called a crocodile. I think that's what it's called. And it punches holes. If you don't have this and all just an X-Acto knife making yourself a slit, all we need is a little space to thread our elastic through. So I'm going to take the easy way out and use my handy tool, line it up, and I did a pretty good job. Okay, so I have my hole. I have a feeling I should have used a slightly larger. So to compensate for that, to compensate for my not thinking ahead, I'm just going to take something that I can just enlarge that hole a little bit with. This is a pencil. I just need it large enough to get both ends of my elastic through. So I have them together, pinched together. And this is 13 inches of elastic. And I'm threading them through there. Or trying to, there we go. And now that I have them both through, I'm going to, oh, I thought I had them both through. There we go. Want them fairly even, so I have them, they're a generous inch, it looks to me like. Let's see what they are. Well, I'll tell you, they are right on to an inch. How's that for being good? And so what I want to do is make certain they stay in that position. But before I do that, I need to make certain that I'm leaving enough elastic for my book cover. So holding those in place, putting my book, my composition book, in place, bringing it around. Let's see. I want it a little tighter. That isn't very secure. So I'm going to pull them both up a little bit. I don't want it to be strangling my composition book, but I do want it to hold it closed. So I'm going to try this again. That feels better to me. It's taut, but not tight, and certainly not loose. So what we now need to do is glue these down. And we put a bead of glue along here and along here, just about an inch worth. I'm going to spread it a little bit on each side. Lay a piece of elastic down onto that glue. Take a little strip of masking tape, and when I say little, I do mean little, just to tape over that. But I don't want it coming all the way to the edge. I don't want it to show. So it will be, I could tear that, but then I'm going to be fiddling with it all day. So go ahead and just trim it off if you need to. There. That should suffice. And I am running my nail along the edge of that elastic cording so that it's nice and tight. And the same thing with the other side. The elastic down into the glue, a little piece of masking tape, and laying it over, pressing around each side of that elastic so it's held in place. Good. So my securement for my compo book is all ready to dry. Now I need to take my inside of the cover out, and it's been drying a little bit. Let's make certain though that it is that we didn't leave glue, but it's nice and loose in there. We don't want some excess glue gluing this down. That needs to stay open. So we are ready to finish. This is going to be our finished product, like so. And we're going to get to that finish by adhering glue to this entire surface. I want to have glue all over. But before I apply it there, because that's more critical, I'm going to put just a little glue on just the cardstock of the outside of our cover. And we're doing this because glue against glue will move more easily than glue against paper, and we may have to move it a bit to adjust it. I'm not worrying about spreading it thin, I'm just spreading it a little bit. And now I'm going to work quickly because that will dry quickly. That's why we use Elmer's glue. So I am applying it all over my inside cover, a little heavier than I might normally. Not so heavy though that it's going to take a week to dry. A little facetiousness there. But keep in mind, the more glue, the longer it does take to dry. So we don't want to use more than we absolutely need to. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to lay it on top and trying to leave an even amount all around, but I want to make certain my spines line up. And when I'm sure they do, I'm going to press this down as best I can. Still trying to even it up. Okay, once I think I have it as good as it's going to get, I'm going to take a strip of tape, put it along our edge, and fold it over. This is acting as a book laying on top, holding it nice and taut. I'm going to do that on my bottom side. Trying to get half on the inside, leaving half to go to the outside of the cover. Pressing it good and tight, especially here at the spine, and also at each short end. And my nail, I'm running along the edge. And also the other short end. Creasing it so that it's as flush with the cardstock as I can get it. And then I'm going to take my book, put it in there. Okay, everything works. Let's make sure it's nice and secure there at our spine. Bring it around, square it up, and maybe help the spine be nice and flat in through there. Once we have a even, and that's pretty even. I don't want to bring my elastic around. It is not dry. So instead, we're going to use good old trusty masking tape and tape it closed. What a piece of art. Not very attractive right now, but in about 6 hours, maybe overnight, when you take all this tape out, you will have a nicely covered mini composition book. Good luck and enjoy.